proper. So if you do not raise objection as to the absence of service or impropriety in service or non-service of a notice in time, then all these three obstacles which are there or presumptions which are there under section 292BB, they will stare against your face. And there is an that in case until 420, here the time limit which has been given to you that you can raise objection of the so assessment the assessment has to be and then you can take forward your objection as editorial or the assessment before court or before case page. Then topic is respond responsibly. So if there is a notice which has been served on you validly under section 142(1)(1) or 148 asking you to file return, and you do not respond these notices responsibly in the sense that you do not file the return, then you are bound to be assessed ex parte under section 144 with all consequences which can be there. And one consequence which can be there is the prosecution under section 276(c). The other consequence can be there in the form of penalty. In case of 142(1)(1) non-compliance, the penalty is there under section 272 capital A, subsection 1 clause D, which earlier used to be there under section 271(1) small b. Now, after 271(1)(c) has been consigned in the dustbin of history, 270 capital A has come, and along with section 270 capital A, since section 271 now is no longer there on the statute, therefore the non-compliance of the notices under section 142(1) or 143(2) for that matter, the penalty which used to be there earlier under section 271 subsection 1 clause small b, now it has been shifted to section 272A subsection 1 clause D. So that penalty can be imposed. And then the non-compliance of notice under section 142(1) and a notice under section 131 subsection 1. Somil has touched these two notices. They are very important notices. Now, notice under section 142(1) issued by an assessing officer asking you to produce certain books of account, because that notice is meant inter alia for this purpose also. Similarly, under section 131(1), as Somil has said, that all powers which are vested in the court under the Civil Procedure Code are given to the assessing officer or to the prescribed authority. And what are those powers? Discovery and inspection. Enforcing the attendance of a person, including the officer of the banking company, and examine him on oath. The third is compelling the production of books of accounts or documents. And fourth is issuing commission to appoint the local commissioner. These are the four powers which are vested in the court when the court is seized with the trying of suit. Similar powers are given to the assessing officer when he is seized with the proceeding. Only then. If he is not seized with the proceeding under the Income Tax Act, then these powers are not there with him. So 142(1) and 131(1) non-compliance, you have not responded these notices responsibly, then see the severity of consequence that may follow. That I am telling. That the non-compliance of these two notices can lead to the competent authority to issue warrant of search against him. That is one of the conditions, that this notice which has been issued, having not been complied with, is the first power which competent authority may exercise after forming reason to believe on the basis of the material in his possession that this is a case, fit case, where the warrant of search has to be issued. So not responding these notices responsibly may cost you very dearly, in a very big terms. Then Somil touched upon the show cause notices which are issued and the jurisdictional notices. And he referred very rightly about at least 4 notices: 143(2) notice, 148 notice, 153A notice, and 153C notice. These are all jurisdictional notices. And other notices may not be the jurisdictional notices. They may be the notices either in the form of the show cause as a measure of the observance of the principles of natural justice. The effect of both types of notices are different, and therefore I thought that I would deal as to how to respond these notices responsibly. Because if the jurisdictional notice is issued with infirmity, either if it is not issued or even if it is issued with infirmity, then the courts have said that since they are the jurisdictional notices, on the basis of these notices, the jurisdictions are assumed. The law has attached the greatest type of sanctity to these notices. Therefore, such infirmities would hit the very existence of these notices or the very validity of these notices. And therefore, when the very validity of these notices would come under cloud, then the consequence that will follow and flow is that the proceeding would become bad and bad and bad. Proceeding would not become irregular. And this is what the difference between the illegality and the irregularity. So if notice under section 143(2) though may have been issued to you, but has not been served in time, and you raise objection under section 292(b), issued in time but served after the time. If issued has also been beyond the time, if the issued is also beyond the time, then even if you do raise or you do not raise objections, it will not militate against it. Because the Supreme Court decision, which Somil has referred, Lakshman Das, and I wrote it in my note, one of my friends, Mr. Ashok Vijayvargi, who is chartered accountant, who is also listening to this webinar, based in Gwalior, a very leading practitioner of that area, his son, very bright son, he argued that matter. He's a lawyer. He argued that matter with the Supreme Court. Now, in that decision, the Supreme Court held that 292(b) does not cure the non-issue of notice. It cures only the non-service of notice. So, if 143(2) has not been issued in time, or having been issued in time but then has not been served in time, and you raise objection under 292(b), then this would hit. This is the jurisdictional notice, and therefore the very assumption of jurisdiction by the assessing officer to take up your case in scrutiny and vary your return income, now that itself would become bad. It will not be irregularity. Similarly, if 148 notice now having been issued to you, but has not been served on you. It has been issued to you, but then it has not been served on you in accordance with law. Then in that situation, jurisdiction to pass reassessment order cannot be said to be assumed. It will not be, let us keep our questions because then that will break the flow.
Sure.
153 capital A and 153C. Because these sections require the assessing officer in case of search or in case of the other person to issue notice under these sections mandatorily. They say that assessing officer shall issue notice. Therefore, the jurisdiction to make assessment order is assumed by the issuance of notice. So, infirmity would go to the root, go to the bottom, will strike it at the threshold, and that the very assumption of jurisdiction now is liable to be declared as nullity. But then there are other hosts, kinds of notices, as Somil talked about section 263 notice. Now, these are the natural justice notice, because principal commissioner, after calling for the record and examining, he finds that the order passed by the assessing officer is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest or revenue. Then, after giving opportunity hearing, giving opportunity of being heard to the assessee, then he can pass order. He can make enhancement. He can pass any appropriate order, including the setting aside. Now, there is no written notice required to be served in response to the proceedings under section 263. All that the section says, all that the requirement is that opportunity of hearing will be given. And that is what Supreme Court in Amitabh Bachchan's case said, that if hearing has been allowed, may not be through the written notice, then also that will be treated as sufficient compliance. And similarly, in case of the Commissioner Appeal exercising his enhancement power, though is required to give you opportunity of hearing, but then there may not be any written notice. If Commissioner Appeal can prove that the opportunity of hearing was given and you also accept on facts, or if I say it like this, the facts are like this, that he asked you and you admit that he asked, then later on, then you cannot say that this opportunity was not given by issuing you a written notice. Because wherever the legislature has required the departmental authorities to issue the written notice, they have mentioned it. And therefore, such kind of notices by which jurisdiction is not assumed. The whole lists are there. Let me tell you very quickly, I mean, what are those sections? Cancellation of registration, 12 AB 4 and 5. Transfer of territorial jurisdiction, 127. 139(9), your return is required to be declared as defective. Show cause during assessment. Yes, these are the show cause notices. If that notice has not been issued, then you cannot be heard saying that assessment be deemed as nullity. No. Your opportunity will be granted by the Commissioner Appeal. Or that addition can be set aside. Now the Commissioner Appeal doesn't have power to set aside. Therefore, he will assume the role of the assessing officer. Then he will say, okay, you are not heard. Okay, now you take this assessment order as the notice and then you give me the reply. That is what the Commissioner's Appeal say. Enhancement special. So these are, so in such a situations when the natural justice, though the natural justice is also a very important element in effective and sustainable adjudication, but in certain situations, if the opportunity was not given and it order was passed, then the courts say, now this order is not sustainable. And if you have got time to reinitiate the proceeding, so that will be as good as that order has gone. But if we see strictly from the legal point of view, then those notices by which the jurisdiction is assumed, then infirmity in the assumption of jurisdiction or in the issuance and service of those notices will strike at the root of the very assumptions, because there is illegality. But then if there is irregularity, then courts have said that irregularity will have to be cured from the stage at which such irregularity has crept. So you make up the deficiency. That is what, this is the distinction between the irregularity and illegality. Now, regarding that 131.1, now one very important consequence of you not responding responsibly may arise is that since powers are same which are vested in the court and the courts have power to enforce the attendance or compel the production of books of accounts or documents. So enforce the attendance through all means, including the use of the police. So the non-compliance of notice under section 131.1 or the summon, meaning thereby if you do not respond it responsibly, then can lead to the coercive measures being adopted by the assessing officer in enforcing the attendance of a person because this power he is vested, which are vested in a court under the Code of Civil Procedure. Yes. Now, this is one important thing which I would like to highlight regarding the notice. Service of notice, issue of notice versus service of notice. Now, where this distinction assumes a very important role and bearing is in respect of the notices under section 148. And that is that the jurisdiction under section 147 is assumed if the notice under section 148 is issued in time. So, if the time limit for issuance of a notice under section 148, maximum time limit is 6 years from the end of the assessment year. 6 years from the end of the assessment year. So, if for assessment year 12-13, 13-14 I am not taking purposely because of the pandemic, that compliance date has been extended to 31st March 2021. So, if for assessment year 2012-13, assessment year is expiring on 31st March 2013, 6 years would come on 31st March 2019. So, if an assessing officer has issued you the notice under section 148 up to or on or before 31st March 2019, then the jurisdiction to reopen your assessment has been correctly assumed. But there is another jurisdiction which this assessing officer would have to assume, and that jurisdiction is to pass a reassessment order. And that reassessment order's jurisdiction can be assumed only after the service of that notice. So the service of that notice may be after 31st March 2019. So many times my chartered accountant friends, they keep on rushing and say, sir, this notice has been served, say on 4th of April. So reply to that, then what? Rather, if you insist on 4th of April, this notice having been served, then the assessing officer would get further period of 1 year or 9 months in passing that reassessment order. Because under section 153, the time limit for passing a reassessment order is 9 months or 1 year from the end of the financial year in which that notice under section 148 has been served. So, if you say the notice has been served on 4th April, then financial year would end next, and then 1 year or 9 months depending upon. So, that period will be available for completing the reassessment. So, issue of notice and service of notice, this distinction will have to be understood. Then Somil discussed about, but then one important thing is the judge-made law. Now, to what extent this law would hold the field, because it has not come from the final court, that you file return or you file return in response to notice under section 148, and the assessing officer happens to issue you the notice under section 143(2) on the same date. Then, in such a situation, the court, the jurisdictional high court in 323 ITR 249 has said that issuance of such notice and assuming jurisdiction on the basis of such notice cannot be said to be in accordance with law because of the lack of application of mind to the return of income filed by you. That is what this particular view has been taken by the High Court. And therefore, based upon this, there are series of decisions from the Delhi benches of the tribunal, to which some of which even I and Somil are the party. Therefore, this aspect, I mean, once you are all out in the field of appeal, then judicial decisions, I mean, they can act as the guidepost for you in terms of the propositions of law. Penalty notices, which Somil discussed about, 274. Subsection 1 requires that no penalty shall be levied unless you have been given an opportunity of being heard. So if the notice is issued, which is vague, where the inapplicable clauses have not been struck off, particularly in the case of section 271(1)(c), where there were twin charges, furnishing of inaccurate particulars of income or concealment of particulars of income, then the courts have said, series of judicial decisions, including the Delhi High Court, that in such a situation, even the very assumption of jurisdiction to initiate and impose penalty now is bad. Notice issued on dead person. Notice issued to the dead person is a nullity. So if any 143(2) notice, 148 notice now has come to be served on the dead person, the court, series of decisions from Gujarat, from Madras, from Delhi High Court, they say unequivocally that on the dead person, you cannot issue the notice. You cannot pass any order. So issuance of notice and the passing of order is as good as a nullity. But then assessing officer must be made aware about the death of a person, or the assessing officer, despite knowing this fact of the death of a person and yet chooses to issue notice, then there is a problem. Yes, one very important dimension of this entire issue, that in case a person is dead, and then if you are aware that he is dead, then you can implead his legal heirs, and then you can take the proceedings on the legal heirs. And whatever tax you would determine pursuant to such assessment on the legal heirs of a deceased, then this amount is recoverable from the estate of the deceased. Now, once assessment is made, obviously by making certain additions, then the penalty. Now, regarding the penalty, the jurisdiction which is evolved is that so far as the penalty is concerned, penalty proceedings being quasi-criminal in character, therefore cannot be proceeded against the legal representative. So there are several decisions, Madras High Court 417 ITR 45, 416 ITR 155. So this aspect has to be taken care of. Now associated with this is, now I was talking about the natural person who has become deceased. But then in case of the artificial juridical person, like company, now when the companies get amalgamated, and then the issuance of notice and the assessments are framed on that company which has already been amalgamated, which does not exist in the eyes of law on the day either when the notice was issued or when the assessment order was made. Now this issue is not res integra, and Supreme Court in the case of Maruti Suzuki 416 ITR 613 now has closed this controversy once for all, that notice to a company which has ceased, which is dead, now that is not a valid. There may be very interesting situations which arise and which have arisen. Like if a notice is proposed to be issued, say to an HUF, but the notice under section 148, or for that matter any notice, does not mention about the HUF nor does mention it PAN number. Nowadays PAN number will automatically be generated, so maybe this controversy is no longer valid nowadays, but then there are certain matters which are being litigated and which relate to the past years. So since the jurisdiction is assumed on the basis of a notice under section 148. And the courts have said very beautiful expressions that the issue of notice under section 148 is not an idle formality. The courts have said, even if this notice under section 148 may appear to be very innocuous kind of a notice, but it confers the jurisdiction. And for the purpose or in the matter of recording of reason to believe, the expressions which have been used by the courts are that this process is not an eyewash. It is not an eyewash. It is not a pretense. Bahana nahi hai koi that you have to reopen an assessment and therefore you record any and every reason and somehow you catch hold of that process. No, the courts have said, since law has attached the greatest sanctity to the finality of an assessment. So once an assessment is over, it is final. And in case you want to reopen that final assessment, if you want to disturb the finality of an assessment, if you want to pierce the finality of that assessment, then the courts have said there are jurisdictional conditions which have necessarily to be complied with by you. And issuance of notice under section 148, that half-page notice, has been accorded the status of a notice conferring the jurisdiction. One question was asked by Manoj, or I do not remember by whom, that before issuing notice under section 148, whether assessing officer is mandatorily required to issue notice under section 133(6). Of late, they have started issuing notice under section 133(6) after seeking the approval, prior approval from the commissioner as required or as enjoined under the proviso to section 133(6). But pehle to they were not issuing 133(6). They used to send verification letter, as Somil has pointed out. And on that basis, no reply furnished. And then they said, we asked, SSC did not furnish. Say, in case of the cash deposit, which Somil also took an example. Cash deposit, we issued verification letter. What is the source of this cash, which has been found deposited in a bank account as per the AIR information? Since no reply has been received, therefore, I have got reason to believe that the income has escaped assessment. The court said that any notice does not become a notice in the eyes of law merely because you, as the departmental authority, happen to issue it. Of course, any notice will be issued by you only under the Income Tax Act, but then only when that power is given to you under the Act. So such kind of verification notices are not contemplated under the scheme of law, and therefore, even if you may have issued, you may be enjoying very wide spectrum of power. You may be an income tax officer, but so far as the validity of this notice is concerned, it is not valid because it is merely a piece of paper. Therefore, you exclude this verification notice and you exclude your charge of non-reply of such notice. And then let us see whether on the basis of that AIR information simpliciter, could you have formed the belief that income chargeable to tax is escaped assessment? Now, that decision, what was the decision, Somil?
Amrik Singh.
No, the Amrik Singh is that decision, but on the cash deposit, which was contested by Ashwini ji.
Veer Bahadur Sijwali.
Veer Bahadur Singh Sijwali. And authored by none other than a very brilliant member. All members are very brilliant, but then Honorable Vice President Shri Pramod Kumar. That the mere fact that an SSC has deposited cash in his bank account cannot ipso facto lead to the belief of escapement of income. There may be n number of sources of that cash. It may be on account of the sale of, say, agricultural land. It may be on account of the receipt of loan. Now, that is a different matter, that in case he has received the loan in his bank account, he may have violated section 269 SS. He may render himself liable to pay penalty under section 271D, or maybe he may be agriculturist. The amount which he has taken this by way of a loan may also be an agriculturist, and therefore he may be falling under the proviso to section 269 SS. So there can be n number of permutations and combinations, and mere fact of the deposit of cash cannot lead to the inevitable conclusion that there was income which was chargeable to tax and which is escaped assessment. So now I give you one more example, and that example which I had an occasion to ask. Notice was issued to certain persons who were doing job work for a big company. Okay, kindly supply me the copy of your statement of account appearing in your books of account of that person, of that company. No reply was given. Then after a year, notice under section 272 capital A was sent. See, I issued you the notice under section 133(6) last year on such and such date, asking you to furnish the copy of a statement. You did not file, and therefore you kindly show cause as to why penalty under section 272A(1) equal to 100 rupees per day be not imposed on you. And these two persons who came to me, I asked, and they even chose not to give reply to the show cause notice also. Then the penalty was imposed. When the penalty was imposed, approximately of 40,000 rupees each, then, and I'm talking more than 25 years back, and 40,000 rupees used to be, even today also, I mean, it's not that a small amount, and moreover, penalty even for a single rupee is an indictment. Penalty of even a single rupee is an indictment. No penalty, I mean, should be allowed to stand staring at your face. That is the principle which one should follow, because it is a stigma. Penalty is stigmatic. So when the matter was challenged by us through CIT appeal, the CIT appeal said, "No, you tell us what option did the assessing officer have?" I said, "Sir, very right. But then if I say the assessing officer did not have the requisite jurisdiction in this case to impose penalty, he may be having jurisdiction to impose penalty if notice under section 133(6) has been issued and the compliance has not been made." I mean, he says that 133(6) notice was issued. मैंने कहा सर पहले यही देख लिया जाए वो notice क्या है. That notice was a simple piece of letter that you are required to supply me the copy of a statement of account of such and such company for this period. And sir, this letter by itself cannot be construed to mean a notice under section 133(6), and therefore you on your own assumed it to be the notice under section 133(6) without making the other person aware. Therefore, there was no notice which was issued under section 133(6). Since there was no notice which was issued under section 133(6), therefore there is no question of any non-compliance, and therefore there is no question of any penalty. And I tell you, more than 250 orders were passed by. When these two penalties were deleted by CIT appeal, then whole lots of penalties which were pending before CIT appeal, now one after another, the entire penalty batch and bunch were consigned into the Arabian Ocean. So, noticeable notices which Somil has explained, and the responsible responses which I have discussed, now will go a long way in determining the efficiency and efficacy of the prosecution of the cases which you as the chartered accountants on behalf, and all these things which I have shared and all these things which you would do as responsible response are within the parameters of law. Now, if because of the non-observance, I always say, because of the non-observance of a jurisdictional requirement, or because of non-striking of a clause in the penalty notice, if the proceeding is held to be bad, the penalty comes to be deleted, some additions come to be deleted, if an assessment comes to be declared as nullity, then of course the appellate authority or the writ authority or the revisional authority would obviously decide it within the four corners of law. So this is not as though they will decide it by going beyond the law. No. So therefore, what we have discussed as to how to make our responses responsible. Now there are questions, and I think that we must earmark some time for the questions also. So I will take the questions. So some questions I am seeing in the chat box also, but first of all I will take the question and answer, and I will take from the top. ये कैसे जाएगा ऊपर? Okay, Manoj, yes, very good question. What is the purpose of second proviso in section 144 that in case 142(1) is issued, no 144 show cause notice required? So the rationale behind it is that when you have already been put to notice by way of notice under section 142(1), maybe not for the purpose that in case of non-compliance assessment would be made under section 144, but that is embedded in section 142(1), because if you read section 144, what does it say? That if terms of notice under section 143(2) or notice under section 142(1) are not complied with, then the assessing officer would pass order. So an assessee should be well aware that 142(1) notice having been issued to him, he is obliged to reply, and therefore the legislature in its wisdom probably has thought not to give a separate show cause notice in a situation where he has already been issued 142(1). Manoj bhai, oh, आज तो Manoj has hijacked this question and answer. There is a difference. Very, very intelligent boy. There is difference between service of notice through email or service of notice in SSE's portal. This Somil would see and then advise whether it should be served through email or served through the SSE's portal. I think Rule 127 says email. Somil?
Yes, sir. 127 says email.
Email, okay.
Yes.
Then next is, sir, the SSE
in this at times it happens that assessing officers put the notice on the portal itself, okay, and no email is received, neither nor physical copy of the notice is served. Now Manoj has also raised this query that at the SSC all time cannot be said to have seen this portal. And he happened to see this maybe after 3 months, when something extra has happened, like maybe some bank account is attached or something has happened. So will it be taken as served, notice served, when the AO has put this notice
in the
on
portal,
the portal itself without serving through email either or through physical mode?
देखिए गोयल साहब, इस service के notice will have to be constituted very strictly. So if Rule 127 read with section 282 says that notice has to be served on the email, then it has to be served in that manner only. So service in any other manner, now according to me, I mean, it's not permissible in law.
Sir.
Okay, and there is another question relating to this in the chat box. I was reading. Yeah, please.
Sir, may I
pardon?
I'll just point out one thing in Rule 127 capital A. One is email message, and the other they have recognized is electronic record. And in electronic record, they have given that it should be displayed on the designated website. Probably this is what probably is portal.
Subject to this clarifications by Somil, I stand corrected. If this is the language, then there is a problem.
Yes, so portal may also be covered when something is on the portal. It may be covered.
Somil, ये देख के बतलाना. Sir, the SSE takes the incompetency of jurisdiction before the CIT appeal and not the order of 127 So CIT appeal is incompetent to hear this objection. CIT appeal is supposed to see and pass order that whether assessing officer is jurisdiction competent to pass order. No. CIT appeal is entitled to see only those facets and aspects which can be raised before him, which have been raised before him. Which can be raised before him is one aspect, but which have not been raised before him is another aspect. So both have to be fulfilled. So CIT appeal is not supposed to see, I mean anything Tom, Dick and Harry. Manoj bhai kya keh rahe hain fir? But in case of notice under section 124(3) from non-territorial jurisdiction and not assessing officer appointed under 120, then I think that even if jurisdiction not challenged, then still can be challenged and appeal, as 124(1) refers to AO and not ITO. I mean, I am at loss to understand this distinction between the AO and ITO. But my take is that once you do not challenge it, then you are precluded from raising. Time limit for assessment by issuing notice under section 142(1)(1). In case return is not filed, as no time limit is defined and extended by inserting a provide. मैं समझा नहीं मनोज भाई आपके प्रश्न को. सारे प्रश्न मनोज के ही हैं क्या?
हाँ जी, क्वेश्चन
कोई MRTP एक्ट नहीं लगता क्या? Sir, 142(1) is also not jurisdictional notice.
If you allow us, we can put Manoj on a.
Yes. हाँ बिल्कुल मनोज को तो आप.
So please continue. Let me allow him to appear with his video and ask. Meanwhile, you can continue.
Okay. Sir, 142(1) is also not jurisdictional notice where no return filed for assessment purpose. भाई ये तो उनको लेना पड़ेगा, ये प्रश्न मैं समझ नहीं पा रहा हूँ. Sir, what about notice issued to a company which has been struck off by MCA and department has filed an appeal against it in NCLT? So इस केस में भी मनोज भाई the assessment would be bad.
Manoj ji, you are allowed to come with your video and ask the question so that.
हाँ मनोज भाई.
Unmute करें sir, unmute करें.
Yes sir.
Manoj भाई नमस्कार.
Namaste sir.
You have hijacked the entire question and answer.
Sir, it's all your blessing sir.
Yes.
सर कौन सा क्वेश्चन था?
हाँ मुझे कुछ समझ में नहीं आया क्या मतलब था. जैसे ये वाला था, ये नीचे से सेकंड है सर. 142(1) is also not jurisdictional notice.
सर आपने कहा कि जुडिशियल नोटिस 4 है, 148, 143(2), 153(a), 153(c). लेकिन जब बंदे रिटर्न फाइल नहीं की होती तो उसका असेसमेंट 142(1) के थ्रू होता है. 142(1) में से रिटर्न मांगते हैं एंड ही डज नॉट फाइल द रिटर्न. तो फिर हम 144 में उसका असेसमेंट कर देते हैं.
ठीक है, वहाँ 143(2) इशू नहीं होगा.
तो देन 142(1) इज आल्सो जुडिशियल नोटिस. यदि ये टाइमली इशू नहीं हुआ.
नहीं. That is not. मतलब you want to say on the one hand the notice having been issued to you 142(1) you do not comply, and then you want to accord the status of jurisdictional notice to it. No, the requirement that notice is only to the extent that you file return. You have not filed your return. In case of 143(2), if you remember, now the decisions, Pawan Kumar Gupta and all those decisions are there, where it was held that the objective of 143(2) is that if you want to vary the returned income or loss, then you cannot do so without issuing you 143(2) notice. And therefore, both notices cannot be kept at par. Next.
This is not a judicial notice, so just keep it to 144 is valid.
Anyway, we may have difference of opinion also. Time limit for assessment by issuing notice. ये ऊपर वाला जो लिखा है तुमने?
सर ये एक्चुअली क्या है 142(1) को टाइम लिमिट प्रिस्क्राइब नहीं करता जब रिटर्न फाइल ना की हो असेसमेंट के लिए. तो इट कैन नॉट बी इंटरप्रेटेड टू हैव ए अनलिमिटेड टाइम लिमिट. कभी भी पुराना केस उठा सकता है. रिटर्न ना फाइल की हो.
असेसमेंट का तो टाइम है ही है.
नहीं सर, जो रिटर्न फाइल ना की हो तब कोई टाइम नहीं है ना.
अरे रिटर्न फाइल नहीं की हो उसका कोई टाइम ही नहीं है. 153 में सबके टाइम लिमिट है.
सर 142(1) के अंदर आपको याद होगा पहले इसको जो मोटोरोला में स्पेशल बैंक का जजमेंट आया था, उसमें इसको रेस्ट्रिक्ट किया गया था. उसके बाद इन्होंने प्रोविजन ऐड कर दिया था कि बाद में भी इश्यू हो सकता है. 142(1) के अंदर स्पेसिफिकली कहीं नहीं लिखा कि टाइम लिमिट क्या है.
आप यू रीड 153 देन वी वुड टॉक.
ओके सर.
ओके. देन इधर चैट में क्या है? चैट में तो ये हो गया, ये मेरा जवाब हो गया। हाँ, ये है फ्रॉम, पता नहीं SHA लिखा हुआ है। सर, इन केस ऑफ 148 AO mentioned that SSE did not file income tax return, though was filed and reasons to believe was bogus purchases based on information received from investigation wing. Whether reasons to believe recorded can be taken as based on inquiries made, and after analyzing the same, further the date of approval not mentioned while principal CIT signing the note of approval at the place, nor principal CIT himself put date before the signature, will receive proper approval based on. देखिए, now in such kind of situations, even if this much is enough. Now, I don't think any court would show any indulgence where the allegations based on the investigation report of the department are of such magnitude and character. I'm not talking of some cases here and there, but I'm talking of the substance based on law. So let us not, though if I have to argue, I will try to find out either the reason, the basic reason that I have not filed the return is bad. So when the return was not available with him, therefore how could he have formed the belief of escapement of income? And regarding the approval also, I'll raise all these issues. But I mean, all those issues are there. But on the broad spectrum of law, I have seen the courts drifting away from the hyper technicalities, at least the higher courts. Therefore, how long would such kind of arguments be allowed to sustain before these matters reach to the courts of the higher echelons? It is a matter in the womb of time. ये क्या है? Lakshman Das was argued. Okay. In case a senior citizen who is not aware of computer technology, he filed his return of income through some lawyer. That lawyer gave his email address in the communication column, but do not respond to any notice. AO made ex parte assessment, and after a month, AO attached the bank account of SSE. Only the SSE came to know that the assessment has been made and obtained copy from his lawyer for filing the appeal. Under these circumstances, can the SSE state that no notice? No, SSE cannot be heard saying when the SSE puts his signature and therefore he verifies the correctness of all the particulars which are there in the return, including the email address. Therefore, at this stage, then he cannot turn back and say that notice was not served on him.
सर, इसमें एक बात मैं ऐड करूं सर?
हाँ, बताओ ना.
There are two things. आपको याद होगा जब फिजिकल नोटिस चलते थे, तो there are judgments के लिए there are different addresses. One for the purpose of assessment and one for the purpose of informing. अगर आप स्क्रूटनी के लिए मैंने किसी को ऑथराइज ही नहीं किया उस काउंसलर को और आप उसको ईमेल भेज रहे हो, whether it can be said to be valid?
देखो मनोज, मैं ना I can argue it on behalf of SSE, but my objective, and as we evolve in course of time, then we should tend to take the law in a holistic manner. ठीक है ना? These hyper technical considerations that this was meant for this, this was meant for this. Rather, many times I have seen chartered accountants arguing in the tribunal, sir, there was no power of attorney in the name of that chartered accountant. How could he have considered this ground? Now you understand the loss, the damage which happens to the institution of chartered accountancy. No court would take any chartered accountant or lawyer for that matter on its face value. If a chartered accountant is standing and saying, sir, I am making this argument, that is understood. He has been given this power of attorney. Now tomorrow what would happen? Now you lose the faith. Okay, you show your Manoj, if you are appearing, you show your power of attorney. Like, where are we heading by taking such kind of an argument? So I can also take it, but then we must evolve beyond a certain stage and then see the things in that context instead of seeing in a hyper micro manner.
Agreed.
Whether विजय वर्गीय साहब क्या कह रहे हैं हमारे? Whether principal DG last है ये. Principal DG, Principal DI, JDI, ADI can issue summon under section 131(1) capital A after taking action under clause so and so. No. In fact, section 131, 1 capital A is a section which has been largely misunderstood and misinterpreted. Now, that action 132(1) के जो एक्शंस की बात है अशोक जी, वो जो ऑथराइज्ड ऑफिसर सर्च में गया है, ये उनके लिए है केवल। पहले ये प्रॉब्लम हो जाती थी कि ऑथराइज्ड ऑफिसर प्रिलिमिनरी स्टेटमेंट क्या रिकॉर्ड कर सकता है या नहीं कर सकता, और वो कर सकता है तो उसको क्या पावर है। तो उस बात को दूर करने के लिए उन्होंने इस चीज को यहाँ ऐड किया 131(1) कैपिटल ए में। बाकी जो अथॉरिटीज हैं जो उसमें दे रखी हैं, उनको बहुत ही वाइड पावर दे दी है सबसेक्शन 1 कैपिटल ए में कि इवन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ सस्पिशन दैट सम इनकम has either concealed or is likely to be concealed, then also they can issue summons. So let us not mix up authorized officer's power, which he is entitled to record a statement or issue summon under section 132(1) और जो दिया है, and the power of issuing summons to other. So I think all questions, अब इसमें 9 में 10 आ गया है, मनोज जी ने फिर कुछ और डाल दिया। जगदीश अजमानी जी, सर व्हाट अबाउट नोटिस इश्यू टू ए कंपनी व्हिच हैज बीन, ये तो हो गया। So now all questions.
सर एक प्रज्ञा ठाकुर का लास्ट क्वेश्चन है, क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर में
बताइए।
If SSC filed application for rectification under section 154, how much time department can take to resolve it? Can SSC file rectification application to rectify turnover under section 154 for return filed under section 44AD?
देखिए, coming to your first question, now under section 154, Manoj, there is a time limit I think for 6 months. For the disposal, and but then it has been held that time limit is directory, though somebody can press upon that this time limit is not directory. Now it should be taken as mandatory, and therefore if an assessing officer, despite notice under section 154, does not dispose, then application under section 154 should be deemed to be granted. If you remember, there used to be a provision like this under section 154 up to a certain time in respect of prima facie adjustment, which used to be made at that time. I'm talking very long back. You will find it in the history of the section. कि यदि वो 6 महीने में डिस्पोज नहीं होती थी तो वो एडजस्टमेंट डिलीटेड मान ली जाती थी। तो पहले वाले प्रश्न का उत्तर तो आपका ये है कि हालांकि 6 महीने का टाइम है, लेकिन वो डायरेक्टरी है, मैंडेटरी नहीं है, तो आप इसको एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिवली फॉलो करिए। Can SSC file rectification application to rectify turnover under section 150 for return file and 44AD? So under section 154, the scope of rectification is very limited. When there is an apparent error from the record, I wonder, I am afraid, now on what basis or what material which is part of the assessing officer's record can you say that there was an apparent error? So, since you have not mentioned as on what basis you want to say your turnover was not this much and was this much, therefore no final prescriptions can be given. So, that's all, Manoj.
सर जो 150 मैं 142(1) का इनिशिएशन की बात कर रहा था, कंप्लीशन की 153 जो बात करता है कंप्लीशन ऑफ असेसमेंट की बात करता है, और मैं कह रहा था 142(1) इनिशिएट करने की प्रोसीडिंग्स को।
अच्छा, वो मुझे याद है मोटोरोला का जो डिसीजन था 95 ITD में, उस वक्त ये डिस्प्यूट हुआ करता था। तो ना यू मीन टू से आज हम 2020 में हैं, असेसमेंट ईयर 11-12 के लिए 142(1) इशू कर सकता है?
That's what I'm asking, sir, क्योंकि उसमें टाइम लिमिट नहीं है इनिशिएशन की, and that's illogical.
नहीं, पर मनोज, when some assessment has itself become time barred, then there can be no notice under section 142(1). But चलो मैंने एक एक्सट्रीम एग्जांपल ले लिया। सपोज असेसमेंट ईयर 16-17 जिसका कि असेसमेंट भी टाइम बार्ड हो गया है और एसएससी ने रिटर्न नहीं भरी है, तो क्या वो 142(1) में नोटिस जारी कर सकता है? दैट इज व्हाट योर क्वेश्चन इज।
यस,
ये मतलब है ना तुम्हारा, हैं? मनोज?
मनोज सर, यस सर।
हाँ, तो सोमिल पढ़ के बतलाएगा इसको बाद में, मनोज को बतलाना, ठीक है? मुझे दिखला।
सोमिल अनम्यूट करने की जरूरत है?
नहीं, अभी नहीं, बाद में बताएगा।
ओके।
सो अब खत्म करें, मेरा गला थोड़ा।
हाँ जी। So thank you, friends. Thank you, Somilji. You have very beautifully explained the noticeable notices which various authorities under income tax can issue onto the assessees, which how responsibly we as a chartered accountant or advocate as a counsel should respond to various notices is dealt by Honorable Dr. Rakesh ji very beautifully and from his core of heart and from his wide experience he has. मैं उनका गला थोड़ा सा ज्यादा मुझे दिक्कत लग रही है अभी. So thank you very much. I'm handing it over to Jagjit for a few words.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Satish ji. When we were discussing, and we were listening to both the, respected speaker Rakesh Gupta sir and the Somil Agarwal ji. So no, it was, it was a very, very knowledgeable, very practical, the legal terms which both the speakers had used during this deliberation, their deliberation. So it was wonderful. Again, the validation for the participant as well as for us. So thank you, Rakesh sir and Somil sir for giving your precious time. So now you have given your precious time to this study circle. So and so
special again thanks to Manoj bhai for making this question and answer very vibrant.
Yes, yes, sir. Manoj sir. Thank you,
so
Manoj sir.
Taken my words. I wanted to say after Jagjit has spoken, I wanted to say that Manoj has also given us a valuable additions by raising so many
Manoj is a very affable boy, very intelligent, and
yes,
very good boy.
The whole deliberation, when we were listening, so, everything you have mentioned, like about the notices, about the reply, and the availability of the time, validity of the notice, so it was wonderful. So मुझे तो ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे हम एक उसमें बैठे हैं कोर्ट में बैठे हैं IDIT में बैठे हैं और डिस्कशन चल रहा है तो strictly the legal way में चल रहा है. So thank you very much sir once again Rakesh Gupta sir and Somil sir for joining us. And now before leaving from here, I would like to inform that tomorrow we have program at 11:30. Satish ji bhi batayenge abhi. So the topic for tomorrow is the amendment in the procedure for registration of the charitable and religious trust. So tomorrow again we have
by CA Rano Jain ji,
Rano Jain ji, ex-ITT member, very respected again. The next speaker for tomorrow's session. So once again, I would like to say thanks to all the persons, the speakers and the special Manoj sir and the participant, those that join us for giving your precious time. And thank you, Satish ji, for managing at the wonderful level.
Very wonderful webinar. Very wonderful webinar.
Yes. Thank you,
Manoj,
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you, sir.
When it comes from your mouth, sir, it's wonderful. I'm obliged.
I enjoyed my deliberation and I kept on feeling as if I am talking with God.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.